the show where the stories of the woods are the ones we know. Grab your gear and follow right along. Join the chase where hunters belong.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Anchor Point Outdoors Hunters Podcast. We are, it's been a little bit of a couple months probably now that we've taken a little hiatus from doing any, but over the last couple weeks, and probably a lot of you guys hunters out there, especially from Michigan, we just went through a bunch of regulation changes, and there's a lot of discussion on that, and there was a lot of discussion leading up to it. And I guess we just wanted to get together. We're all big deer hunters, and we look forward to that, just like many of you do, to get out in the woods. And you know, there were some regulations that people wanted to see changed, and I guess today, we're just going to go through and just kind of talk about that, kind of get our perspective on it. And I guess I would just encourage anybody that didn't get to watch, go to the MUCC Facebook page, and they have it posted on there. That's the only place I've actually been able to find it where you could watch the whole meeting. And you can go to the June 26th meeting where they put a lot of the recommendations out there, and the July 11th where they actually voted on some of the stuff. So I guess we can just start it out. I mean, we've all actually taken a little bit of time and actually got through it. It was painful, but you know, we were able to get through it. I guess who wants to start out? Kind of give me your impression, and then we'll just go ahead and go around the table here and just kind of give our impressions of what we thought. I guess just to get it started.
I don't know. I guess just trying to watch it and understand some of the stuff that they were voting on was kind of hard to follow. And when you're watching the meeting, and it just seems like they didn't know which amendment they were even talking about half of the time. And I mean, most of it boiled down to, you know, trying to extend seasons or to, you know, reduce the, you know, doe population or figure out how to do some of that in different areas. But just watching them, there were so many breaks, and they were asking each other questions because they didn't even know when they were coming into the meeting, what necessarily amendment they were voting on, or what the amendments even were explaining, or what they were talking about. And I mean, for me, coming in just trying to watch it, it was
painful.
It was just kind of confusing to even understand what they were talking about, or what they were voting on, because as a person watching it, I mean, they're supposed to be they should be leading the meeting and, you know, discussing and displaying to us like their thoughts and what they think, you know, should happen to help, you know, hunters and control, you know, the wildlife populations and things. And when you go to watch something, and the people that are supposed to be just, you know, explaining to you why they're doing what they're doing, and they don't seem to really understand what they're doing, it just makes it really hard to follow and have any confidence that, you know, what they're talking about or any of their amendments actually are going to help. Not that, you know, it's an easy task, which I understand it's not, but when you show up to something and the people that are running it don't really seem to have a complete grasp on necessarily what's going on, it just makes it difficult.
Well, my take on it was it appeared to be anyway, a big disconnect between the Michigan DNR part and the National Resources Committee. I believe the DNR came with a lot of information. I came with some presentations, some regulations that they either were for or against, and it just appeared that things were dismissed quickly without a lot of conversation. And once again, I think there was a lot of work done, but dismissed quite quickly.
Yeah, you know, like I said, it was, when I first seen it, it was 3.5 hours. And, you know, I had fast forward through some because they took like 3 recesses through that. But, you know, I went clear back to June 26th because anybody that knows me, I mean, I've got drone. They were going to vote on the drone. And that was kind of my main interest. I mean, I really have not sat down and watched too many of these NRC commission meetings. I don't know how many people out there have done it, but I personally have not sat down. And I had a totally different view coming out of these last 2 meetings, the June 26th and the July 11th meetings, of this whole process. Because I was like, really, this this is really what all of our hunting regulations boil down to, that I felt that nobody really put any thought other than their own personal. I mean, we all had the understanding that, you know, if you're gonna, even if you're gonna vote on baiting, doe harvest, it is based on facts from the DNR or facts from something else. You were going to use scientific facts to govern our wildlife. And I did not get that. Out of either one of these meetings, even the recommendations from DMI people, I mean, they put their recommendations out there for people to really hear that. And even in the June 26th, I actually, and I'm not going to, I guess, name commissioners' names. You guys can do that, can go on there and you can listen to it. So but there was commissioners and then there are commissioners there that I thought were only for their own agenda. I mean, you could really see that they didn't really pay attention until it was their turn. I mean, you had people up there. I mean, some of them I felt paid attention, but for the most part, I didn't see. I figured that they were after their own agenda. And the one, I can definitely say that's where he was at. But I don't know. I came away with it with a totally different perspective watching it. Because I thought I always figured it was more structured, and it didn't seem like that. And and I watched a few things, and we have talked about it. Even the Chad Stewart, you listen to some of his stuff. I mean, he really strikes me as somebody that's really more in tune with it myself than what I even, DNR. Oh, DNR can't do this. They're not doing that. I mean, Chad seemed to have a better understanding, I felt, with the Michigan hunter than our own commissioners. So I guess I guess that was my take on the meetings themselves. I think I felt that we could definitely have a better communication on that. I don't know. I don't know how everybody out there feels about it, or how many people actually have listened to any of these meetings. I mean, I guess I'm probably more intrigued now to go to more and have more of a voice now after I see this, to really get my voice out there, like these DMI. And I don't, like I said, we watched it. I don't know. And I'd really like to hear probably from some of the people that were on the DMI committees, how you felt. I've read some of the comments, and a lot of them, were not good. I mean, a lot of them were not pleased by the whole process. And they made a mockery of it, honestly. I mean, I felt that the way it went, it was really not, like you just said. I mean, it was not presented well, really on a whim. I mean, we just, let's talk about it. And they voted on stuff that really, honestly, they didn't even know what they were voting on. Some of them were confused. Like I said, I don't even know if some of them were paying attention. They only had their own personal agenda. And when that was done, they didn't care. I mean, everybody just wanted their little piece of it done, and I guess that was my take on it.
Well, at the end of the day, they've got a huge problem, and none of us have the answers. They've got a deer herd that's increasing, hunter population that's decreasing. We've lost 200,000 hunters in the last 20 years. I have no good answer for it. They have no good answer for it. But to stay the same is insanity if you keep doing the same thing again and again. So something has got to change. Extending seasons, doing these things is not the answer. People don't need an extra 30 days to hunt deer. We've got plenty of seasons now. Once again, trying to get the youth involved. But now here in 2025, they're going to limit that to does only. Now, whether you're for or against that, I mean, that's not going to increase the deer harvest. Mm-hmm. And so, they've got real struggles. They've got, good deer biologists, Chad Stewart being one of them, that seem to kind of know what we need to do, but unfortunately, they don't make the decisions. and unfortunately we as a public voted to have the National Resource Commission be the final governing body. So at some point we've got to let the people that know what they're doing make some decisions.
Right, and and you go back to that, and we went back and they could, if I remember right, because I remember when we voted on that. It was 1996 when that voted on that, and it had to do a lot with the bear, to introduce the bear back into that.
But I don't think anybody knew what they were doing when that vote came around. It's perceived as that's kind of a check and balance. That back then everybody thought the DNR just ruled the country and whatever they said went, and we needed a check and balance. But seeing what that check and balance looks like today, I'm not sure is such a good thing.
No, and a lot of people commented on that. I think they need to really rethink Proposal G and really go back in there and take it off there and actually rethink this whole thing. I mean, we're not in the same management vision that we were in 1996. We have bears that you can't, and we've bear hunted. There are tons of bears in Michigan. We went from the Baldwin area where we live, lucky to, get it in 14 years. You'd spend 15, 16 years drawing a tag. Now you can do it in 10 because they're giving like 5 times that many tags out. I think like you said, we're not the same, and we need to rethink that whole process. And this, from what I can see, is not the answer. Like I said, Chad Stewart, I think even he has a better vision on that. There's a lot of recommendations that most of us as hunters probably knew that wasn't going to happen, like the baiting. Most of us that's been here knew that was probably never going to happen, but it was really interesting to me that what they would second, motions would come up and what they would second. You knew they already had their mind made up that they were not going to vote on it. Nobody seconded it. Everybody had their head down. It wasn't even going to come up for discussion, which is really what bothered me. Is like, okay, it still should come up for discussion for anybody watching it or any of us hunters out there, other than saying, no, we don't want to do that, but we'll definitely take a buck away from a youth or a disabled hunter. That is our focus. Because that's where our problem is. That's not our problem. We grew up with it. Youth hunters, shooting out the bucks, their parents are killing the deer, blah, blah, blah. We all went through that. We all thought that. As Kevin, as my son, you went hunting. I didn't shoot your deer. My experience was, and Paul, you did it with your kids, that was a chance for you to show them how to hunt and bring that out, not to, okay, there's a deer, now I can shoot it. That was never, and most sportsmen, I'm not going to say it doesn't happen, but I don't see those people as true sportsmen. I don't see those people really having their kids' best interests in there to pass that along. And that's where we're struggling right now, is to pass that whole hunting heritage. You need those youth hunters. We need those. And disabled hunters. And I think it was Clark, or I'm going to mention names. I wasn't going to mention names, but there was a lady that on there said in June 26th, we thought we were only voting on the youth, not harvesting bucks. So it almost was like they were going to take the youth and not let them harvest bucks, but the disabled were still going to be able to do that. They were only going to target the youth. And then the other commissioner says, yeah, they thought about it, but I just figured that it wasn't. Well, that once again, that's personal feelings on an amendment that your feelings should not count. Because if his feelings count as a commissioner to say, well, I just didn't feel. Well, you know what? Then I don't feel that you were right in doing that and taking that. I think there's other steps that we could have took than taking away from our disabled hunters and our youth. When you're trying, like Paul, just like you said, we're dropping that. I don't.
Well, there's a couple things. There's not a single thing that they voted on that's going to change the number of deer harvested this year or next year. Not a single thing. And actually, from the biologist's perspective, which is in the report, taking away that buck from the youth hunters for next year is going to do nothing to decrease the deer population, So there's nothing out of this whole thing that's doing anything to accomplish their goal. Not a single thing.
Yeah. Paul, we've hunted together a long time, and you've always been one to you've always done that. You always put people in and youth and stuff like that. People, first-time hunters, even if they weren't youths, you've had them come over and harvest their first deer. You get enjoyment. At least I know I do, and I know
Exactly.
you do.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter if you're a youth or not. You get a lot of enjoyment for people getting their first deer, their first turkeys. And I just think that was a bad decision to handcuff kids or somebody with a disability to just harvest something that maybe that's, and if you have a disability, take them even early in the season. Like I said, not everybody views that same as what I have or you have, because, I guess a little selfishness comes in that, I got this buck and, the neighbor kid shot it. You know what? Great. If that neighbor kid got it, great for him. I guess I'm just don't have that mentality.
Well, and first of all, it's a society thing. It's what society's become. We had to create this youth hunt years ago because supposedly parents didn't want to take their time and sacrifice it for the kids. So we had to make a separate season because we couldn't do that. Well, that's a society problem. That's not, if you really cared and wanted your kids in, it didn't matter if it was your time or not. But it's amazing in all these different recommendations I'm looking at down through here, and the one thing they pick is to take away the bucks from the kids, okay? And that's a public opinion thing. That's not a deer science thing. That's a public opinion thing. But all these things are public opinion items on here. So they had to pick something, because otherwise they wouldn't have approved anything.
Right.
And and I'm not saying that all these should be approved, but it does nothing to help their goal, does nothing to do what they claim is their problem, but yet I guess they can say they did one thing, and it's probably going to be the biggest negative.
Yeah, I guess that's the biggest one that I took out of the whole thing. They didn't even get to the part that I really wanted to see, but I guess by the time I was there, I didn't really care because, the part that really, all my kids are grown, but that is a big part of a kid's, it was mine. I couldn't tell you the first time that I was able to get out and go hunting for the first time and get out. Like you said, it wasn't in it. You waited till it was time to, when you were 12 or 14,
Yep.
to be able to go out there. You didn't get that opportunity at 7, 8-year-old to shoot a deer or even opportunity. But I bet you the first time my son had the opportunity, I took him out there because I knew how I was.
Yep.
And I don't know, from the bottom, I shot my first doe on Paul's property, and do I remember it? Sure. But do I remember the first buck that we shot together?
Yeah.
More? Yeah, of course. It's not that shooting your first deer isn't great, and I had it was awesome getting your first deer, but a buck is different. There's a reason that there's a discussion about should we allow them to shoot bucks and doe, whatever. And and if a youth doesn't have the opportunity because they're not allowed to, they're just not going to go, because they can go shoot a doe during regular season or late season or whatever it may be. So it's not going to help. And like you said, their opinions, they're on the committee, everyone's opinion should have, but they're supposed to have the opinions of us and everybody else in there as well, and their personal opinion shouldn't overshadow the hunters of the state of Michigan's opinion.
Right.
If they're actually listening, then they may understand that their opinion may not be the most popular one.
Yeah. And there's tons of other things, that they voted down, and I guess they didn't really vote them down. Like I said, I encourage everybody to watch this meeting. Like I said, it's going to be painful, but go through it because you'll see kind of what we're talking about. And I don't really think you can get the gist of what we talk about other than it sounds like we're only putting our own personal opinion on it. But you'll see it. I mean, it'll come up, and anybody that did watch it, I'm sure agrees with us to a certain point. Not everybody's going to agree on this stuff 100%, but one thing that they voted on to sideline. They didn't even, I think they just did that for the DMI groups that they did. You know, the commissioner himself said that, you know, well, we're not, they wouldn't even second the vote to even look at it and discuss it. They didn't get a second. And like I said, and most of them don't even pick their heads up to look. And, you know, it's to the point where they're just going to roadmap it off to the side. They didn't vote it down. We're just consideration for later. To me, that's a cop-out. To me, that's a cop-out to actually discuss it in front of the public that you're actually there to support and put recommendations out. I felt that regardless, it was 3.5 hours. If they wouldn't took so many recesses to figure out to fix the messes that they already voted in, they would have had time to actually look at some of these and discuss it in front of the public, other than those guys spending all that time looking at and putting their recommendations in. And they were picked, like I said. I mean, these people were picked to sit on these committees and come up with their hunting regulations or whatever, like antler point restriction for the whole state of the Lower Peninsula. All of a sudden, you know, and this is my view, and I'm, like I said, not everybody's going to agree with it. But when we started it out, I want to say it was like 7 counties when we first started, 6 or 7 counties when we first started. And we were in the first section of that, and more people complained that, oh, that's stupid. I don't care. I'm going to shoot bucks. I'm going to do this. I don't care. They're not going to stop me. And those same ones were the first ones to shoot the first spike or the first 3-point, first 4-point out there. Now are like, yeah, I got this nice buck. Well, why do you got that nice buck? How did that buck get to 2 to 3 years old? Because you let it, and you've been practicing that for years. I mean, on your property, and you got your neighbors to do it. So you've seen the benefits of it. And anybody that's been on land that did it just did the 8 or better or whatever they did back then, actually seen the process of just letting them go. Like you said, once again, you never stopped the youth from shooting them. But I mean, because you knew the importance of that, getting that first deer, because it could be a spike horn or a 4-point, but that thing might have been a 150, could have been a 150, you know what? And they're happy. They didn't care. That 4-point was the best thing that, you know, and they're going to go to school, talk to their family. And like you said, and you're never going to forget that. So when that antler point restriction, I felt that when that just went sideways and nobody even wanted, you know, no, we're going to sideline it for right now, because they thought it would make everybody too much, I think they had buck centric or something, where it would just force people not to want to do that. And I'm like, I can personally say that there's times that I've went out there on my property and had 5 deer out in front of me and not a legal buck in the one of them. I mean, through that hunting, I mean, spike horns, you know, 4 points, not a 3 on one side in one of those deer. So if I wanted to take one, I had to take a doe. So you can't tell me that wouldn't sway a few people to let a few bucks go or whatever and harvest more does. I mean, that's my opinion. Like I said, that's probably not the majority, but I felt that just to take that off there, I'm sure there was a reason for people to bring that up, because they seen the success in the 13 counties it does now. I mean, at least, you know, my perspective of that. I don't know. What do you guys think about the antler point restriction? I mean,
well, I mean, it's something personally I've always been for a long time, but there is a biology to it that you definitely want an older age class of bucks doing the breeding. That is a healthier part of the deer, you know, herd. So it's not just about getting big bucks and stuff. That's a byproduct of doing the right thing from deer management. But once again, when you talk about revenue and licenses and why do people go to other states to hunt, it's because they have practices like this in place. And not saying that we need to attract everybody from every other state, but it's part of it, because at the end of the day, a lot of these decisions are made from economic parts. You know, we've got to fund the DNR, we got to fund the National Resource Committee. So somehow we got to do this, but we can't stop making money. You know, we can't give licenses away. You can't give licenses to kids like maybe you ought to, because that's going to cost them money. Well, you know, we're not doing anything right yet, so let's try something different.
Right. But like you said, nothing they recommended did anything. I just don't think we're, you know, like I said, and I'd definitely encourage comments on this, just because, you know, I would be willing, you know, to talk to anybody that has a say from, like I said, once again, love to have somebody on the podcast from one of the DMI, or get a couple of you on here just to discuss that, because, you know, I really felt that the hunters were not represented on this at all. I mean, I didn't even feel through the whole thought process that any of them really cared. I don't know. I just, because it was so hard to follow to begin with.
I mean, it's hard to follow something like, I don't know. In my mind, they should have a vision, and if the vision is, okay, we need to shoot more does, or we need to do this or do that, and then look at these things and see, and actually talk to the DNR and see if they recommend any of this stuff actually is going to have any impact on it. Like, it just doesn't look like they even took in consideration what their main vision was when it came to each one of these amendments. It was, they have a vision of this, but then this amendment came up and they just, you know, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't work. And they took their personal opinion, whether it would work maybe on their property, something that might work on our property, may not work on Paul's property, may not work. They just didn't take the whole state and the whole vision of what they're trying to do. I don't, in my mind, like, you know, going antler restrictions are one thing, going to maybe like you're trying to reduce the amount of bucks, and let's say you shoot 3 deer every year. Well, if 2 of them are bucks and 1's a doe, then that's only taking 1 doe out of the population. If you go to a 1 buck system, maybe you take 2 does. And if you're, I mean, there's just a lot of different, there's a lot of different ways to go about trying to accomplish a goal, and it just doesn't seem like they have a vision, but it doesn't seem like any of their amendments or any of their main goals to try to accomplish that vision is on the same track. They're going this way and that way and this way and that way, and it makes it confusing for us and obviously for them, because they don't really seem to know which way they're going either.
Well, and if you truly cared about the deer problem with the population, and you didn't care about the economic problem, take, as a suggestion, a buck license costs $20. Okay, doe license is $0. Okay, you can get however many, 2, 3, 4, whatever the number is. You still have to go buy it, but it's a free license. Okay, do that for a couple of years and see what that does for you. Maybe it's not a big enough incentive, but if you want a buck license, you got to pay for it. But if you want a doe license, you get them free. Mm-hmm. But see, the economic side of it won't allow that to happen. But you got to do something to try to promote people to shoot does. Okay, if I don't have to pay $20 for that doe tag, you know, maybe that offsets a little of my processing fee, because people can't afford processing now. When it used to be $49, it wasn't so bad, and now it's $129. I mean, nobody wants to shoot 10 deer and have, you know, that kind of money into processing.
Especially with the economy the way it is, it already costs you enough for groceries.
But I say, you know, you do that for 2 years. I mean, you look down here, they say they're going to revisit regulations every 3 years. That's crap. You know, you got a problem that you need to be on right now. You know, you're going to talk about it again in 3 years. You know, I mean, it's
especially when you didn't, you know, and like I said, I think a ton of people are in the same view we are. They didn't do anything. Yep. They didn't accomplish anything. Now, if you want to revisit something in 3 years, just, you know, it's just like this youth hunt. I'm going to go back to the youth and disabled, the liberty and independence hunts. So, you know, it's going to start in 2025. It's going to start next year, and it's going to sunset in 2029. So now we're going to have to wait that long to see, well, yep, it didn't. No, because it was a personal opinion. In my opinion, it was their personal opinion, because they don't want to see it. Apparently they don't have kids. They've never experienced that. And if they have, then shame on them because their kids are not there anymore. You know what? You should be carried about, or somebody, maybe you have just a youth that's just disabled. I mean, come on. I mean, there's just so many things that, you got to take into consideration before you just don't want to hear no excuses. But nothing that they did, I don't know. It just frustrated me after I listened to it. It just frustrated that they didn't do anything. And then they didn't even talk. Like I said, I had my own agenda when I went into this, and they didn't even talk about it. And they didn't even mention it. They just like, okay, yeah, we're done. Well, we'll reconvene next month and we'll be here. It's like they didn't care. They didn't care that they didn't address all of the issues. And, like I said, there was two people there that I think a lady from the DNR sitting next to Chad. And like I said, anybody who watches it will understand this, and probably the lady that was taking notes were the sharpest ones out of the whole bunch. I mean, they kept that whole thing going, even though it messed up a couple times, but they were the only ones that really knew what was going on. I mean, I can't imagine what we would have had in place if they wouldn't have spoke up. I mean, because they stopped a lot of them. They were like, "Well, wait, what'd we do? What do you mean, what did you do?" I mean, and that was frustrating as a hunter, as somebody that I felt that really relying on these guys to help us out, because we're all stewards of our own property. We're all going to manage it. There's no way that I could take 10 does, and I've said this to many people, that I could take 10 does off my property. I'm lucky to see 15 different deer in a season on my property. I mean, I see deer around, but I'm lucky to see that many. I mean, there's no way I couldn't take 5 deer off my property and think that I was going to have any type of deer for the next year, or for my kid or anybody else to hunt. If neighbors even if all of our neighbors took one deer, everybody that lived around here, if they didn't hunt, we wouldn't have any deer. I mean, we do not have that population here, like they do in other areas. So like, we're all stewards of our own environment. So, I mean, I'm not going to trust these recommendations. I think that I'm going to continue to do what I feel to manage. I mean, you will do what you're going to have to do. I mean, if you're looking for a buck for a certain age, you're not going to take those 1.5-year-old deer. I mean, most of us don't anyway. Most of us are, and probably the only thing they are right on is, a lot of us probably are not in the sport of just shooting any buck. We'd like to have a nice buck. We're all out there. Everybody's goal is to shoot a nice buck. Antler point restriction has, I think, opened that up for a lot of us. I mean, that it wasn't even possible several years ago. But I don't know. I just don't think that that whole process is going to help us anyway. I mean, there's nothing. So we're all going to be, and that's what they're mad about, I feel, if we're not taking enough does. Well, nobody trusts them. Nobody trusts them to put that in there. You can give us 50 doe permits. We're not going to shoot them. We're not going to shoot the does if they're not there. And the farmers down south, they're going to take care of it. As far as I'm concerned, if they're in there, they're going to take care of it. They're going to do what they have to do. But I don't know. I didn't hear of anything, but the UP was a lot of discussion up there between the northern, the middle, and the southern portions of that. But when you look at lower Michigan, they didn't want to separate that. That was all one. That was all, lower Michigan, no, we're going to do this. There's no baiting. There's no this. We're going to keep the 10 doe permits. We're going to do this. They didn't say, okay, from the rifle area, like 10 or whatever it is, 42 or whatever, south, they're going to open up doe permits, or they're going to do this. They're going to extend the season. Because I can guarantee you I'm not going to go shoot 10 does off my piece of property. I'm not going to shoot probably 3, let alone 5 or 10. I just don't see. They should have separated. They could have done that, but they didn't. They just said, no, you're not going to do it. And I think we've had this conversation about the baiting. I mean, you can't bait general, but through those independent hunts and the youth hunt or whatever, they can bait. Or 2 gallons, I think it was, the last time I knew.
Well, and once again, I mean, they've got a problem. Obviously, we can't deny that there is disease, but there's been disease for deer in hundreds of years. And, the problem is now is, they blame or they attribute some success to the ban on baiting that we're not finding as many deer. Well, first of all, it's a fantasy because the baiting didn't stop. Right. I mean, you check every gas station, every farm market, every feed mill. They're still selling just as much as they ever did, And unfortunately, disease is a terrible thing in the wild, but it's also Mother Nature's way of taking care of the population. If this deer population gets out of control, disease is what's eventually going to take care of it. It's how it's always been. Right. And so,
even your structure, like you brought up the age.
Yep.
The longer you live, you have more successful. I mean, I'm sure the longer I live, the more I'm successful to get cancer or to get something. You know what I mean? And the deer, I don't think are any different. I mean, if people are not killing deer, in any numbers, I mean, I'm sure at some point that,
The bottom line is they don't know how to deal with the disease, and the easiest way when you don't know is just say no on everything, and then so you're not wrong if something happens. It's no different than at your meeting when the one commissioner just said, well, in good faith or good conscience, I can't approve that.
Right.
Okay, well, he could be right. I'm not saying he's wrong, but he didn't have any good information one way or the other, so it's just no, and well, that's where they need some good information and make decisions. And I guess if no is no, it's no. But it's, we've got disease in Michigan. We've got the episodic hemorrhagic disease that happens every 7-8 years that kills thousands of deer. You've never heard of anybody trying to stop that, and they can't. It's a little biting fly that, affects deer, and, but you never hear any talk of doing something to stop that, but it happens naturally in nature.
Yeah.
And part of disease happens.
Yeah, I was just hoping for more. I guess when I listened to it, I was hoping for more. Just the general hunting public getting something out of it. That they took something that they did. Because there's a lot of want to do a $1 state or just want to redo it. I mean, some of the recommendations, if I read them right, were a lot like Ohio, where. Kevin, I've hunted Ohio, and you can go down there. You're allowed $1, but you can buy a doe tag for $15, and it's good through like mid-November or like the 3rd week of November, and that's it. I mean, so if you're going to shoot it, you're going to shoot it early, but it's there. Otherwise, it's an either sex tag. So I mean, you're going to spend $100 some on a tag that you're going to shoot a buck, hopefully.
And a lot of states are like that with a $1. Some states, you just get doe tags with a buck tag. If you buy it, you get 2 or 3 or 4 right with it. You can shoot. So, I mean, other states have figured it out that $1 is definitely the way to go. To try to help anyway keep your deer herd in line. But it comes back to economic things in Michigan. It's always been about, driving the dollar. And the dollars, I think, are going away. So,
right. I mean, well, part of that is just the reduction of the number of hunters. You said 230,000 less hunters
in the last 20 years.
In the last 20 years. Like, part of their vision, I feel like, should be what can we do to try to draw more people to come hunt here. Right. And I think not letting them, not letting these shoot bucks, like that's not, if they get turned off at the age of 10 or 12 or 13, like that's 30, 40, 50 more years they could have been, but if they get turned off at 12 because, I can't shoot a buck and there's all these regulations and none of it makes any sense to me and they don't want to deal with it, well then they're turned off, and that's 50 years of someone purchasing tags and helping out the deer management of the state of Michigan. That, I mean, and like I said, from the economic aspect of it, 230,000 less hunters. Like, usually when you buy, like, you're going to buy at least a combo license here, or if not, a buck and a doe. So that's 2 licenses. And when they're talking about deer population, even if 50% of them harvest 1 deer, that's still 100,000 more deer that are harvested in the state of Michigan. It's just like you said, there's a vision, but I think the vision is skewed for what it should actually be.
Well, and I've actually seen more, and I've shared it more on social media. I mean, like, I think it's the beginning of August, like August 4th through the 10th or 11th, something like that. There's a lot of places, I think it's a week long for hunter safety. I mean, for people to do that. Michigan's actually doing it, and I've shared that to try to get people out there, because we used to do a way better job of exploiting getting kids into that and saying, hey, yeah, they're having hunter safety at the school this weekend, and you were part of a sportsman's group that actually put on hunter safety. And that stuff just left. I mean, people don't gather in hunting communities like they used to. People used to just come together and have camaraderie in that, and that's not like it is. I mean, everybody for themselves, and I don't know. I just feel that, hopefully this, I mean, because I think it's good that you actually see it, because I've had a lot of people ask me, hey, where there's any hunter safety? I mean, and it's adults too. I think just kids, but I mean, yeah, anytime you can encourage somebody to take up the sport that sees you enjoying it, and like we have, I mean, for years, I mean, we've always tried to put more people in there. I mean, like I said, back to you, Paul, I mean, you've introduced a ton of people. I mean, people that, brought over and let them harvest deer, and, you get more enjoyment out of that. I mean, I think I can say for myself, I know I do. I mean, taking people out turkey hunting or deer hunting or whatever, my kids included, and people that kids that don't even I don't have kids that small anymore, but I love doing it, because you never get that reaction where they're just excited. I mean, I don't care if it's a doe. I mean, I'm sure. Still, even with the regulation, there's going to be people those kids shooting does that, you can't portray it like we are. That, it stinks that they're not shooting bucks, because if you make it that way, then you're ruining it. We're ruining it. If we went into it with our own personal thought that you should still be able to shoot a buck, and we took that down to the kids' level, you're ruining them. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You should still, what? We're going to go get you a doe. You want to shoot a doe? We're going to get a doe. You want to go hunting? We're going to get a doe. And you got to portray it like that. But I just felt that the way it went about, that was not his intention when he did that, because he was too adamant about that. And even when he talked about separating the youth from the disabled hunts, yeah, I thought about it, but I thought that wouldn't be, that's crap. I mean, you're not looking at it, and you didn't even know the licenses, honestly, that were involved in it. So you implemented an amendment to a law or whatever hunting regulation, and you didn't even know the repercussions of what you were talking about. Even though they did take it out to 2025. He was not gonna sit there and say that, yep, I'm in agreement with it. No, you had to basically prove that the DNR had no way to see how many licenses. There was too many licenses out there for them to say, okay, I didn't realize that. Well, you should have realized it. There's no excuse for not knowing if you're going to amend something if you're sitting on that board. I just think that you should know.
In my opinion, the reason they put it out to 2025 is it gives them time to change their mind. I mean, basically that was just another buffer that they can get all the flashback from it now, and they still don't have to implement it. it's a year away. And granted, I mean, this is late in the year. They've got to get handbooks out. They've got to do all that stuff. So obviously they need to be, but they were able to make, the 1 or 2 changes on here for this year and make it happen. But that's just kind of like, to me, a cop-out saying, okay, well, we're going to put it out for next year, give it a date range, and if we change our mind between now and then, that's fine.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel, like I said, I mean, I'll never discourage anybody. I mean, and we've done, like I said, I'm going to go back to, because I can personally contest to it, and I know, Paul, I've been with you when done it. I mean, if that person wants to take it, you let them take it. And I don't care what it is. I mean, if it was a spike horn or a 4-point back in the day, a doe. You didn't say, to try to keep a kid's attention in a blind for a couple hours is challenging enough. So when that doe steps out and they want to shoot it, you let them shoot it. You want them to have a good experience. You do not want them to have an experience. And see, and I guess that's where it boils down to me. And I mean, even somebody with a disability, maybe that's a good enough part of the year for them to get out. The weather's good. It's not crappy. It's less hunter. I mean, see it from that side of it. I don't have a lot of experience taking a lot of disabled hunters out.
Right, and obviously, and you hope not, but depending on the person's condition or problem, it might be the last deer they have an opportunity to take.
Correct. Yeah.
So I mean, sometimes you have to walk in the shoes to say, okay, this isn't like for me, this is hard. This is hard for me to get out here. This is hard for me to be here. This is, might be a once in a lifetime thing for me.
Yeah, there was no compassion in that. I mean, anybody that watched it, I mean, like I said, I encourage anybody to watch it and, take your own. And I'm not here to bash the whole NRC commission team. I just think
it's just a disappointment when you have, when you go to watch it and then that's what transpires. It's just kind of disappointing to see, like, this is the people that are making our hunting regulations are supposed to be having the best for all of Michigan's, deer hunters in mind. And it just doesn't look like they even understand what's going on.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
And I mean, back to the youth thing too. It's like a trophy's in the eye of the hunter. Like, a trophy to this person might be a 4-point, or it could be a doe, or it could be whatever walks out in front of them. I mean, it's just, and then to reduce, their excitement or what they're allowed to even shoot because, I can only shoot a doe if it walks out here, and maybe they have 3 bucks, 3 spike horns and a 4-point or something walk out. I mean, then they just have to sit there.
Oh, maybe they don't have the doe population like we have here. I mean, the doe population, I can guarantee you I'll probably see during the rut or whatever, I'll probably see 2 or 3 bucks. Not very big ones, I can guarantee you. But I can guarantee you I'll probably see the same 1 or 2 does on my property bringing those bucks in. And I'm probably not going to shoot the does just because I don't have any. And like I said, we're going to just be stewards of our own land, and we're going to plant our food plots. We're going to do what we need to do to entice deer to come in. But if they're not there, we're not going to just harvest them. We'll go hunt somewhere else. You know what I mean? And just hopefully someday you will be able to get to that point where, you can be able to harvest a few deer off your property and it's not going to be, I can guarantee it ain't going to be 10 deer. I mean, they can, like I said, they can extend it to March if they want. I'm not going to take any more deer off my property or any properties that I hunt that doesn't support it. So yeah, it was the whole process. Like I said, for me, I was kind of disappointed because and you kind of hit on it, I think I had higher hopes for it, that I thought it was different, but I definitely think, Chad would have a better solution. I mean, he talks, at least the few things that I don't know if we watched the same one, Paul, or not, but I have watched a few things, because even though I've known about Chad and I've seen him, on different podcasts or whatever, or, news stations and stuff like that, the more you actually get to know his views, the more he lines way closer to what we want than what they see. And I just, and like I said, and I think part of that is everybody went into this, the DNR is the enemy. DNR is the enemy. Well, I'm not saying there's bad in everything, and probably doesn't align with everybody, but Chad, I felt, had a better understanding of how to get us there than any of these members up here that, to me, I looked at it. Once again, like I said, I encourage everybody to look them up. And like I said, I'm not bashing them, but to get a good understanding, because we're talking deer hunting regulations and deer. We've been deer hunters our whole life. We probably live more deer hunting than we do anything else. Our life revolves around more deer hunting than it does anything else. And you look at the biography of anybody that's on that commission, and there's not a solid deer hunter in the one of them. Everybody's biographies are in fishing, upland birds. If they were setting fishing regulations, I'm sure they would be experts. But there's not one on there that I felt that would have a good understanding of what a deer hunter that they've hunted. And I don't know what the criteria. I thought I read somewhere where, to be on the commission, all you've had to do is have a hunting or fishing license, and I could be wrong. I felt that I read that somewhere to be appointed to that. Some of them do have degrees, Bachelor of Science degrees in certain things, but I didn't see a deer expert in the bunch of them. And we're talking deer, and I don't know if that's why all the heads were down like this, because do they really care? By those regulations, it doesn't look like it.
Maybe they just don't know, and maybe they don't. I don't know. Maybe they're not that knowledgeable in it, so they're. And but you would think because of their position that they would take the time to become more knowledgeable into making these decisions. But
and I think that's why they did the DMI. Honestly, I thought part of the DNR. I think that's what. You said something about that, wasn't it?
I think the only reason that they came up with this deer management initiative is because their hunter surveys that they do every year are going away. They're getting less than 30% response. That's one of their key avenues from getting information from the public, and the public doesn't care. Basically, they're not responding to the surveys. So they had to come up with a more direct way to get this information. So they created these deer management initiatives. And it sounds like they got a lot of good feedback. That's, and once again, just because somebody wants something doesn't mean it makes sense, But they took 95% of the feedback and threw it in the garbage and, appeased everybody by doing a couple small minor things that really will probably be negatives in the end anyway. Just one little thing. There was, in the Lower Peninsula, reading on here, they restore a traditional muzzleloader season because if everybody's not familiar, we have a muzzleloader season, but now we've pretty much let you use whatever gun you want. It's not a muzzleloader season. It's called a muzzleloader season, but you can use whatever you want, especially in southern Michigan is where that's big. So, obviously some of the people that just enjoyed that wanted, and that makes no sense that they didn't do it because they made up seasons for everything else for half the year. They could have very easily said, hey, here's a 5-day muzzleloader season. They could have done that and been a positive thing, but they don't want that because they want people to use rifles and everything else and kill deer.
Yeah.
So it's, they're just not going to do it,
right. Yeah, most of the muzzleloaders now are so efficient. And
I think their goal was a traditional to
right.
go back to the old, which once again, like you say, a muzzleloader today can shoot 300 yards and, not like the old 50 or 100 yarder that smoke stick that they were using. But, but that right there just kind of shows me they had no regard to this input because they could have very easily done something with that. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't have been hard at all. I'm not saying it would have helped their situation, and that's why they didn't do it, because it wasn't going to result in killing more deer.
Right, but there's a lot of. I personally probably throughout the years I've been more bow bull hunter than I have been rifle hunter. I mean, as a kid, I rifle hunted and stuff like that. But through an adulthood, I probably stick to more bow than I did that. But when it was muzzleloader season, I was bow or muzzleloader. That was my 2 seasons. Those are what I enjoyed the most. And I think it was just because you get closer, a little bit harder, maybe than trying to take never hunted areas that I could shoot 200 yards or even 100, probably 150 yards. But those were the 2 seasons I liked. I mean, they were more challenging to me, and it's just what I enjoyed. So yeah, I was really shocked that if you're going to extend the season into January for rifles or whatever, and you're going to extend that to public land now versus just private land. So now you got public and you have it all, basically everything. Yeah, I think you could have done something with that muzzle, right?
Yeah.
I think you could have done that.
Everybody talks about extend, and everybody complains about the youth hunt. Oh, it's second, third week in September, whatever it is. They get to kill all the deer before the bow hunters do. Well, why don't you start bow season September 1st? Let the bow hunters have a couple of weeks before the youth hunt and do that. We keep talking about extending seasons into January and whatever. I mean, other states do it. Opens the first weekend in Kentucky, deer season. So why don't you start bow season earlier? Why don't you make people happy because they got a chance to shoot a velvet buck maybe, and then you get all this blowback from the youth hunt that happens the second or third week, Do something like that instead of extending seasons.
Yeah, and for like Michigan, I mean, you can say, it changes the deer and stuff like that, but so does, bear season. Bear season, and people out running dogs. You can't tell me that at the third and fourth week of September, when people are out there running dogs and you got bird hunters, and it's not just the youth hunt that takes deer and repatterns them off that. You have bird hunters, squirrel hunters. I mean, from the middle of September to the first part, if you're hunting public land or anywhere where there's people that can access past your property or wherever, they're going to change the deer. You have bear hunters that run dogs and people that don't run dogs, but you have all those people in the woods. That's going to push these deer out of certain areas when that pressure gets there. Everybody knows that. Anybody that's a deer hunter knows that. So you can't just, because it always was, oh yeah, they turned on, youth season turns everything nocturnal. They start blasting. Because I think not only do we have bear and small game open up and then the youth season, but wasn't there a doe season that opened up in there somewhere?
Mm-hmm.
So, it's not just, and I guess I'm defending the youth part of it just because I see a more of a benefit to that. But there's more, I feel that's where this gentleman went with it. You know what I mean? Just thinking getting away with it. Maybe they don't deal with the bear hunters like we do around here. There's a lot of bear hunters around here.
Well, like Paul was saying, if you wanted to extend the season to try to harvest more deer, extend the beginning of the season. In Michigan, it's 10 degrees outside and it gets dark at 4 o'clock in the afternoon in January. If you're an average hunter and you're working, like in September, it gets dark at 9 o'clock at night. You can go hunting after work if you have private land or what. In January, you can't. You're limited to the weekends unless you take time off of work, but not many people are using their PTO or vacation to hunt in the middle of the week. If I get out of work at 4 o'clock, it's dark in January. If you're really trying to extend and give people more hunting opportunities, you'd be better off extending the beginning of the season than the end of the season.
Right. And in a spot that and any of us that's hunted late season, or the late season, by the time you get rifle season and all that, those deer are so nocturnal. They're not coming out. Like you said, not only is it getting dark earlier, they're just not going to move.
They don't have to. It's dark at 5 o'clock. They know they can feed or whatever from 5 p.m. until 8 a.m. They don't need to come out during the day.
So if you're going to bow hunt for does or whatever, or like you said, open it up in September, they're still on a feeding pattern. Everybody says that's why the youths get all these deer, because they haven't repatterned themselves from their summer patterns to the fall patterns or whatever. Yeah, I mean, that would be a better recommendation than any of that right there. I mean, but once again, I mean, who knows? I mean, I couldn't stomach going through the whole thing because I got so frustrated. Even June 26th meeting was never, I don't know, it's all over the place. I mean, it's just to try to follow it. I mean, there was even comments that even the DNR, I'm sure, after they left that meeting on July 11th, had to sit down and really go back through and really find out what happened, because I mean, it was not easy to follow, and it took 3 or 4 days. I mean, normally you would get a committee like that and say, yep, we voted on this, this is what came up, this is what we voted on. It took them 2 or 3 days for even a lot of the news stations to come out after the fact. It was the following week. I believe that was on a Thursday. It took them to the following week to really come out with the regulations, and some of us didn't even know it. I mean, you really had to look it up and say, okay, what did they vote on? They didn't even know. I mean, the people that were there reporting on it and the MUCC that was there videotaping it, you really had to go back and say, okay, yep, they did that one, because they went back and forth so many times and amended a recommendation or an 8 that they did that. I mean, they took an hour recess and then came back in just so they could fix what they voted on because they messed up. I mean, that's where I struggle with the whole process right there, because I felt that as somebody that was going to end up having to figure this out and be a repercussion for myself, they didn't serve me personally at all, because nothing that's there is going to change my mind. I'm not going to buy another $20 license, like Paul said earlier. I mean, and spend $140 to go get it processed, and spend $20 on top of it to get another tag, hoping that I shoot one. You know, and I've already I buy my license every spring. Turkey season, I go through and I buy my combo license. I buy my turkey tag. I buy it. You know what I mean? So, if they would go to a $1 and a doe on the combo license, I mean, I personally would be up for that. I mean, that's something that I would support. But that even got turned down. I think that was even a recommendation that the combo license actually go to a buck and a doe. And you can't tell me that wouldn't have been a better doe to diminish it a little bit more than keeping it the way it is and forcing you to buy a $20 doe tag on top of it.
It's just when someone makes a decision, and like if it's a supervisor at work, whatever, someone makes a decision, even if you don't like it, if they're confident in that decision, you don't have to like it necessarily, but at least you feel like, okay, that person's doing this for a purpose, for a reason, like they have their reason behind it. But when they make a decision and it's not a confident decision, they're, guessing, and there's this avenue and that avenue, and we'll see what happens, whatever, like it just frustrates you, because if you don't like a decision, you don't have to like a decision, but if someone tells you this is the way it is, whether you like it or not, too bad, this is the way I view it's best moving forward, then you're like, okay, I accept it. We'll see how it goes. But when someone makes a decision because they're going to try this or try that, they don't really know what to do. Like, it just doesn't instill any confidence that, it's the right decision, or that they have any idea what's going on.
Well,
and I guess that's like this most frustrating part of it all. Like, whether it's the DNR, like the DNR have, long-term goals that they make decisions for, and things that, they may not be super popular, but it's maybe the best for the deer herd population, but it may not be an immediate gratification like most people want. And that's what upsets people. But when, this committee gets together and they're making decisions just to we'll just change this year and see how it works. Change that year, see how it works. And it doesn't instill a lot of confidence that it's actually going to work.
Well, for commissioners I feel, supersede what they want versus what the DMI wanted. just because you're on the commission doesn't make what you want any more important than what the hunter wanted. And that, to me, that's exactly what I seen. It was not. They weren't even going to second it. They wasn't even going to come up for a discussion. And you can't tell me that they didn't know that. That June 26th was, okay, let's get everybody's on there, and then we're going to go in here and we're going to make sure that it aligns with what we want. And that's how I felt. Now, if that's it or not, I don't. I'm going to have my own opinion because they had theirs. I'm going to have my own opinion, but I don't believe it. I just don't think that they put a lot of those guys on there, and hopefully we can get somebody on here or somebody that want to come on and talk about it, because I'd really like to know that process, because it sounded like they fast tracked it a little bit and didn't really take a lot of it in consideration. So,
I mean, and that could be part of it too, if they're fast tracking it and trying to, because we're in July, it's getting close to, season coming. Like, should this have been they should have had these meetings back in March or April, like where they could have had actual time to sit down and process it and think about it. They're not trying to just rush a decision to get it out there before hunting season starts. Like, I mean, that could be part of the issue as well. Just not taking enough time, not doing this stuff early enough in the year.
Yeah. And like I said, we've talked a lot about the does and stuff like that, which is basically how it all went around there. But there's a lot of things that hunters wanted that had nothing to do with does, but that was their only focus that they wanted. I mean, people are looking at the quality of deer, quality of bucks, even that. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that really want to see us go into a totally different direction than where we're at. And it's just, they're not interested. And they should be. I think, look at, like Paul said, you look at other states. Because I know some of those regulations, I don't know if they were from the DMI recommendations or not, but some of those followed, like I said, Ohio's regulations. I aligned with them because I know some of those, and they did align pretty close to some of those. And we all know Ohio has decent deer. And they just, I don't know, it just doesn't, and there's not, I mean, they've got some public land, but I mean, I don't see the hunters up here like we did in the past either. So once again, I think, it's a big discussion. I don't think you can actually get through it all in an hour or whatever, but, and we're going to, here on Anchor Point Out Hunters Podcast, we're going to have, we're going to get a little perspective from the UP, because, we really don't hunt a lot of the UP, but I do have a good friend that grew up in the UP and has a lot of perspective on that, and is very knowledgeable in a lot of that area. And we're going to have him on. He'll be on one of the next podcasts that we do, to really go through the UP, because like I said, there's people, I mean, there was a lot of people back in the day that went across the strait and did deer hunts back in the day, and that's just not going to happen. I mean, there's just so many different things going up there, and I say that most of that meeting was wrapped around trying to figure out how to regulate the UP's northern to southern middle sections, and really, because I'm sure there's just like here in the lower Michigan, I mean, the northern part, I mean, we have deer concentrations heavier, not over by me, but the south is apparently saturated, and they're worried about car deer accidents and everything else. So I just think there's more discussion on what we could do, and like I said, we're going to get more into that on the UP side in a different podcast. So, but we're going on just over an hour, and so we appreciate you guys sticking around. Like I said, we're definitely going to be talking more of that. We'll get back on the horse here and get a few more podcasts under our belt, but we appreciate you sticking around. I'd like to share this because we definitely like to get a lot of feedback from everybody and what you think. You've heard our versions of it, but we would really like to hear what you think and what you thought. I mean, like I said, I encourage everybody to go out there and watch that meeting, both of those meetings. You'll take about, I mean, I took something out of both of them. but like I mind you, it is painful to get through. So just bear in mind that it's not a streamlined process. And but I thank you guys for coming back on. I mean, like I said, I think we got a lot of different topics to talk about, and maybe something will change. I mean, I know there's some regulations on the drone recovery that that they were supposed to vote on, because that was a big topic last year, but they never got to vote on. Maybe they'll vote on the August meeting, because I plan on watching that one and just kind of following it now, because like I said, I think as hunters in Michigan, and I think Paul, you even said, I think we all got to come together and figure out what we've got to do. I think, like I said, I think Chad Stewart has a good voice for us. I believe that. I personally believe that he's a good voice for the hunter, regardless of what some people think of the DNR. I mean, there's some sour, but I think this guy, at least from what I've seen, is on our side and really has a good voice for us. And hopefully they'll listen to him, and he continues to listen to what we have to say. And I think getting this podcast out there and sharing ours, and because maybe there's some things that we skipped over, you don't agree with, that maybe that we could actually, you could sway us a different way. You know what I mean? Just because we're open for discussion. This isn't just our way. And I'm always open to hear a different perspective, because I mean, it's on taking does. I know people that won't even shoot a doe because they don't think the deer herd's what it used to be, so they'll never take a doe. And then the baiting, whatever. There's a lot of different avenues that people think different, and I'm encouraged everybody to voice that on here in a respectful manner. I mean, I don't want to get into a big argument with nobody about it, because hunting to us is fun, and that's what we want to keep it. So I think that's all I have for this one. Like I said, I appreciate everybody staying tuned and listening to us, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks. Once again, I'd like to thank everybody tuning into this week's episode of the Anchor Point Outdoors Hunters Podcast. From all of us here at Anchor Point Outdoors, we hope you have a great week.